Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Let's check our. Let's see. Can everyone hear me this morning? Let's make sure we are good here. Yes. Good morning. Good morning. You see, I have my friend, my pup, my behind me today, or actually both of them are in the office with me this morning. So they are here. Just kind of ignore them. They should be fine when it comes to the noise. They're pretty good about when I'm in the office working. Let's see. So I guess for the sake of time, let's get started. Because I want to make sure that I am respectful of your time. Today we are talking about the rooted in presence, cultivating mindful embodiment for well-being. And so today we're just going to be talking about understanding how the mind and body connection is connected to mindfulness. And then we'll throw a little spin on and specifically for therapists, but we're going to explore how we can harness this power that we have and then help us change or revolutionize our personal practices and reclaim kind of like how we're feeling so that we can really manage our burnout or not deal with burnout and move through the wisdom, because the things that we learn about ourselves are the same things that we can teach our clients. So, let's kind of get started with our space here. And if you're here, just let me know in the comments that you are here. And let me know where you're coming from. Let's get moving. All right. So let's get started. So I hope everybody's having a good morning. Before I get started, what's in your cup? Um, just let me know what's in your cup. Most people will um, have tea, have coffee, whatever. They just drink water. I'm a coffee girl in the morning, so hopefully you have something good in your cup. So let's start with the history. That is always the first place that we want to start. And with history, it's kind of interesting because awareness of the mind body connection is not a new thing. So when we think about maybe 300 years ago, basically there was this system of medicine that was put in place, and it was treating the whole body, not just the mind, but the body as well as a whole. However, but in the 17th century, the Western world started to see that the mind body were two distinct entities. Like, how could we have two different things when you got your head, your mind is up here, and your body's down here? And there is the connection highway, which is the vagus nerve. And there's communication going back and forth between the body all the time. But needless to say, in the 17th century, they thought that it was two different things. And they viewed the body as like a machine and was something that we can replace. It's independent parts. There's no connection whatsoever. And then, but if we kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit, when you look at the reason for that is, think about like in the hospital, you have your foundation of this is the foundation of surgery, trauma care, pharmaceuticals, anything that has to do with like the hospital and surgery and like adding, replacing limbs, things like that. This is the foundation of that. But it was greatly reduced scientific inquiry into humans' emotional and the spiritual life. So basically, they downplayed the mind and the spiritual healing that kind of comes with it. And as we know from just history as well as some of the practices you may have had, is like people heal faster when there's the connection between the mind and the body. So if we start jumping to the 20th century, things start to change we start to see research about the connection between the mind and body, and it significantly demonstrated how complex these two are linked together. So we kind of have to thank the integrative psychiatrist James Lake for this one. He was from Stanford University. Um, and he was the one that kind of started to spin all of the um practices and things like the and understanding the connection. But if we move forward and think about ancient Greece, they always felt like there was a value and strength and beauty in the combination of the two modalities, the brain and the body. In Eastern cultures such as India, like ancient Indian cultures, this is where we originated with yoga. Now we know the basis of yoga is mind and body. So, with the renewed interest in like this mind body kind of thing starting to happen in the 19th and 20th century, we get our yoga, we get mental practitioners, we get movement specialists, we get all these different types of movement therapies that start to focus on the mind and body. Now, if you are aware of the Joseph Pilates, so in the late 1800s, well, I take that back. At some point, the late, I guess, the early 1900s, late, the mid like 1900s or whatever, before 1980, before he died, he basically came up with Pilates. And we all know that that's kind of like using your body to strengthen it. Um, and it's kind of like, it's the background of the basis of a lot of things that we do with free movement, free dance, free mind, and all these things. So here is the progression of how we got from mind and body. So now, if we move forward to more present day, all the mind body interventions focus on the intersection between the brain, the body, and behavior, and how they are practiced with intention, and how we use the mind to alter any physical function and promote overall health and well being. That is how we look at it now. And so when we think about, maybe I want to say around 2000 and maybe 8, the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health, it used to be called CAM or something else at some point. They basically they're the foundation of putting all these modalities together, and how we have the professional application of all of these. Um, and now people are using their research that they started like back in 2000, between 2000 and 2008. They started putting all the research and practices together. And so all of their research focuses on the relationship between the brain, the mind, the body, and the behavior again, and their effect on the health and any diseases that we may have. So we are think about how you integrate all the pieces together. Okay? So, let's take a quick minute and talk about what is the mind body connection. And let's actually officially define it. So it's really just a set of mechanisms through which one's thoughts, emotions, and spiritual practices can directly affect the way your body functions, being conducive to an illness or to health. And these effects are seen in our stress load, um, as well as our health and our immune system. So there's a few things here. I see that my slide actually didn't want to change for me. So we are going to stop sharing really quickly, and we're going to go back. We're going to go back in. I found that my system does not like to play well sometimes. So we are going to give me 1 second here. I apologize. Okay, it's not wanting to cooperate today, so we're gonna have to roll with it today. So let's do present. Oh, see, puppy decided he wants to get a little loud. Okay. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Let's start defining some of this information here, like mind and body. Um, and let's find out like how this works for us. So we have so don't forget that we have the mind. They define it as it's not synonymous with the brain. So these are two different things that they're thinking about. You have the brain, which is the physical piece, and then you have the mind, which is more of the conscious mental states that we have. So our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, our attitudes, and our images. The brain, again, is the hardware. It allows us to experience the mental states that we have. So the brain is like the physical piece, and then the mind are the thoughts, emotions, and everything that we kind of work on in our therapy practices. That's kind of what that is. So then, if we look at the nervous, the endocrine, and the immune system, and all of the organs, those are of the body. They all experience an emotional response that are being communicated through chemical and physical language throughout the body. And they're always talking to each other. So that's where I mentioned the vagus nerve. It is what connects the brain to the rest of the body. And then there's all the nerve endings that kind of happen that are connected to that. So the mental states are fully conscious and they're also unconscious. We can have an emotional reaction to any situations or all situations really without being aware of them and even reacting to them. So this is kind of like where you get that visceral response in your body. You're having an emotional reaction, but you don't even know that you're actually having it sometimes. But this is like when you think about like say when you get angry, you may not know that you're angry, but then you start to get hot, you get a little sweaty, you get like maybe sweaty palms or you get flushed. Those would be your physical reactions that you may not necessarily be aware of. So sometimes those same physical reactions can be positive, they can be negative, and again, they're felt through the body. So think about how in a mental state of anxiety, causes you to produce stress hormones. That is the cortisol being dumped into your body. There are mind body therapies that have become more of conscious states of mental states, the consciousness of the mental states, and they have increased the awareness and guide us through the mental states. So when we are feeling it in our body, we can understand or we see how our mind is shaped around or how we are guided in those practices um, to understand kind of like what's going on with us. So, what are the mind body practices that we have? Um, they are, well, before we get there, you have to think about some of these practices are like cognitive therapy, mindfulness, meditation. There are art therapies such as art, music, and or creative therapies, art, music, and dance, acupuncture, yoga, tai chi, gong, biofeedback. These are just to name a few. Guided imagery. Those are all mind body based therapies that are known through, say, CAM, the complementary and alternative medicines kind of like space. So that's one place that you can kind of see those. So why does this matter? of understanding the brain and the body connection is because there are some conditions that are not detectable in your blood, like blood samples, like when they draw your blood, X-rays, CTs, or MRIs. They are you can't see them at all. And so understanding how the two are connected, you may be perfectly fine through the what they can see or what is physical or what is detectable, but there's a lot of pieces that you can't see because it's actually in your mind. So, how are the mind body responses related? And so really it's understanding the basis of mindfulness, and I know this is just should be a quick review for you guys. So a simple concept of paying attention in a very particular way on purpose in the present moment in a non-judgmental way. This is by John Kabat-Zinn. He's the one that kind of sort of started talking about mindfulness many years ago, and so the basis that we work off of is that framework. We are paying attention in the moment and we're not judging. We are aware of our thoughts, feelings, and senses, kind of like what's happening to you and like what's happening around you. This doesn't, the way we think of mindfulness doesn't conflict with any of our beliefs, our traditions, religion, culture, science. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's strictly what is happening where you are in the present moment. And it's choosing to learn and control your focus and your attention to what is happening presently. There are two specific components to mindfulness. So there's awareness. So we notice the thoughts, the feelings, the physical sensations that are happening to us. And the goal isn't to like clear your mind or stop, like what you're thinking. It's just being aware that you're actually having these thoughts and feelings, and you kind of like get lost with them, then again, trying to get rid of them. The other component would be acceptance. So, should you observe the way you're feeling, the sensations you're having, you are non judgmental and you just kind of leave it there. That is it. So, a good example of this would be I'm walking along on the beach, and as I'm on the beach, I can feel, say, the wind, the smell or taste, the salt air. I feel the sand between my toes. That would be being present in the moment. So let's talk about think about how often you've been stressed or depressed or whatever about anything in the past, um, or something that may happen in the future. So you have to realize in this mindfulness space that the past really only exists in our memory, and that is very much connected to depression. The future only exists in the exploration of the mind. So that is connected to anxiety because it's the future we don't know. And if you're truly, really present in the moment and you're mindful in this present way, those two extremes don't exist. Now, I'm not saying that they don't happen because we often think about like the past, we often think about like what if in the future we do that. But if you are intentional about staying present in the moment, it will help you kind of manage like the two extremes and how you are responding to that in your body. Okay. So the next component is what is mindfulness versus mindlessness. So we know what mindfulness is. So let's go into mindlessness. These are the things that we're doing to disconnect from ourself and our body. This is like our autopilot thoughts and behaviors. We just go, we just do it. We are not even thinking about it. That's what that is. So then the other piece of this comes what is doing versus being. So it's not that we are not just, meditating or in meditation, yoga, prayer, deep breaths. It's like these are the acts that we're doing, you know, just to say, like, hey, I did it, right? These are the activities that we're doing. Because remember, self care is the vehicle to the journey of self love. And I know it doesn't have to be super complex and all these intricate things, but think about when we're doing something, that's doing. Being is actually in the moment, being present in the moment. So we always want to be present in the moment as much as we can. So there are a few types of mindfulness. So it's the state of mind, as we know, and there's no particular action, there's no particular exercise. It could be with the practice of mindfulness, it could be without. However, some common ones would be meditation, walking, like walking meditation, like body scanning, deep breathing, and then there's some other things with eating and hygiene. So if you have trouble with trying to practice mindfulness, and this is a new concept of you actually practicing this, one of the easiest ways that you can do is start with your eating. And so, because when you take a bite, you can take a minute, you can be present, you can taste all the flavors and just kind of be in that moment and try to describe it the best way that you can through kind of like your words and your thoughts and your feelings. Okay, so let's keep moving along. What are some benefits of mindfulness? So we know that we can reduce symptoms of depression, it improves our memory and focus, and our processing speeds. It can improve our ability to adapt to stressful situations. We have a greater sense of satisfaction with relationships. We reduce rumination. That's a big one. Because remember, we're staying present in the moment. It keeps us from kind of like being in the past or living in the past. Um, and it improves our ability to manage our emotions. So it's just an overall good practice to have no matter what, no matter where you are, no matter what's going on in your life. If you can figure out how to stay present in the moment all the time, then you can essentially eliminate a lot of the things that are going on in your life that you may not really like. Okay, so the next one is, I just want to remind you, if you haven't seen the previous workshop, that there's the piece of embodiment that we want to bring in. So, mindfulness is, again, in the mind, being attentive, deliberate, without judgment, present moment. Embodiment, we bring in the actual physical body. So, this is the better connection between the brain and the mind. It's it's the present of the two that are actually happening. So when we are embodied, we are fully living and expressing the things that we're actually doing for the mindfulness piece that we're practicing. So again, we got our mind and then we have our body through embodiment. Okay, so what are some ways that we can kind of start practicing some self-regulation in this? Um And there's a few things, that we can do. Um, but before we do that, let's talk about a little bit about some somatic, things that are kind of going on in the brain or in the body so that we can definitely have, a mindful body. So, there are a few things. We have to remember that stress starts in the brain, and we can try to decide, we have to decide if this is safe, is it dangerous, is it pleasant, unpleasant, is this a threat, is this challenging? Um, and then we have to think about, like, do we have the resources to solve the problem? Um, is it something happening unconsciously or consciously in the body? It's talking about, um, you know, what's the difference between kind of like, are we reflecting in this space? Are we learning, or are we ruminating and dwelling in it? So like all these things are happening in our body. And we have to think about that the upstairs brain, which we consider our frontal lobe, and our downstairs brain, which is our amygdala, are two different spaces. And they respond differently when we're having a situation in our body. And so when we think about the what's happening in our upstairs brain, it's a slow process. It's selecting, it's focusing, it's trying to control versus the downstairs brain. It's like bam, an immediate reaction. It's a fast process. It's kind of like you see a snake on the ground. Your brain is trying to figure out, well, what kind of snake is this? Is it poisonous? Do I need to run away? Do I not need to run away? Versus your downstairs brain says, oh, there's a snake. It's coming to snap at me. I don't know what kind of snake that is, and I'm going to run away. That is the difference between the two brains and how they kind of process. Stress in the body, if you didn't know, the cortisol gets dumped in our body. And what happens is that frontal lobe that we have typically shuts down. And so it makes it hard for us to make decisions and we feel fatigued and we have like all these things. And that's kind of why you want to sleep. Um, this is kind of like the body's trying to figure out if we want to do fight, flight, or freeze. And so when we are super high on our cortisol, it starts to cause like other issues, like health issues, like irritable bowel or sleeping problems, inflammation. There's a lot of things that kind of come with that. Skin irritations, autoimmune kind of things, food stuff, too much mucus. Like there's just way too much. So we have to make sure that we keep our cortisol levels low so that we can continue to have positive effects on our body in general. So we got to think about the there's too much which causes the issues, and then there's the healthy pattern where we go up and we go down, which is something that we need to be aware of. So prolonged like exposure to like chronic stress would be like a birth, a wedding, like going off to college, something like that. And you may get a cold, you may get like a little virus because your immune gets a little suppressed. Versus chronic stress would be more like you're a caregiver. Maybe you have a family member in prison, or there's some other things, and those are more related to like your heart disease, your autoimmune disease, things like that. So keep in mind, like, where is your stress level, and you have to incorporate. So, what are some effects of like we know that everyone 70 to 80% of people experience trauma at some point in their life. We know that. But only 20% actually maybe get acquire or get diagnosed with PTSD given the situation. We have to remember that 67% experience ACEs, and that's everyone, the adverse childhood experiences. Remember, we all have had some form of trauma going on in our life. And really, we have to think about trauma is just how we are processing this information. So, two people could experience the same event. However, we experience it differently. We experience it differently in our body. We, have a different response to it. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through mindfulness. So we talked about the benefits of mindfulness, but and all the other pieces. So let's talk about like how do we kind of learn to manage our responses? And so really we have to one start with generating positive events, positive thoughts, positive emotions. Like this is something where we have to align and identify and affirm like the positive spaces, people, things that we have in our life. We have to align with our goals. And it's not just noticing that the goal is there, it's about the attainment of the goal and feeling good about attaining our goal. So the positive experiencing positive emotions more frequently can help us with how we manage our overall stress and regulate ourselves. Practicing gratitude in the positive space is huge, where we can like try to find the meaning of things. We can use journaling, things like that. Practice Acts of kindness. So this is another one under positive emotions. So whether we are happy or if your happiness increases, this is the place that sometimes when we do things for other people, we elicit happy emotions out of us. Practice humor and laughter. So there's a strong sense of safety when we are kind of like when we feel like we're in a good place and we can laugh at things and we can have humor around things versus when there isn't. And then you can see the changes in your nervous system. And so if you are in a state of like parasympathetic nervous system, that's like the calming part versus a sympathetic, which is like you're elevated, that's the place we don't want to be, then it's easier for us to elicit the positive emotions. Another thing here is to notice the positive events that we're actually having in our life. So, practicing mindfulness creates calmness, stillness, presence, acceptance. It provides some form of emotional regulation as well as self awareness. It changes our memory. And then again, we're reducing anxiety, depression, body pains, and just improving the overall quality of our health. Another space is so there's a lot of things under general emotions or positive emotions, which was a study done or by Mozowskowitz, if I'm saying it correctly, in 2019. And so, a few more things that he mentions. So, we are going to capitalize and savor these positive events. So, this is where we offer self congratulations like, hey, yeah, you did it. That's that positive self talk that we give ourselves. We are absorbing and sharpening our coping perceptions. So, we are engaging in this, but this is how we know that we are doing well. We're building memories through this place. Another one is during the stressful events, we are helping kind of like reshape our reappraisal. So remember how when information comes in our brain, you have to decide like, is this a flight, fight, or freeze situation? And when we are in those stressful situations, it helps add more to our brain so that it understands like if this is a good or a bad situation, how do I need to respond? So it's a reappraisal. It helps with increasing that. Um, Sometimes it offers a good distraction. Sometimes we need just a good distraction. Sometimes it helps us either engage or disengage and avoid. You know, because sometimes when we're in those stressful events, you know, sometimes being avoidant of situations can be very helpful just to our overall mental health and well being. So, a few things to just kind of remember in this space is like, don't fake it. Just you're teaching your body, you're teaching your memory to kind of respond and act to different things. So just kind of like work through that and be in that space. Don't just be happy or practice, saying like, yes, I'm happy, but practice being genuine with those positive emotions and feelings. Habits can help with some short term things, but it also can have long term effects. So just be mindful as you're improving yourself and your mindfulness space that you are just improving your overall well being. Okay. So let's move on to movement. So I like the word movement versus exercise just because, exercise can kind of turn people off. So movement is better. 30 minutes a day outside, 30 minutes is even better. And it helps connect your parasympathetic nervous system and help it be online when we are in good movement. And then remember, we are constantly sending signals that are distracting, reinforcing to our brain, whatever it needs. Some of the benefits of movement, as we know, reduces stress, improves our overall well-being, cholesterol, like body fat, like these are all the things, muscles, pains, and quality of sleep and cold, and we're not going to get old fast, reduce our heart rate. Like these are all good things like when we are in movement. So, restorative rest. This is another huge one that I think a lot of people kind of overlook. And so, when we are resting, when we are in that REM state of sleep, we are effectively healing our brain, we're consolidating information, and we're regenerating cells. And so, there's a protein that gets kind of released um, that kind of creates this immune response, and it only happens while we are sleeping in REM. So if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're not getting this chemical to release, which is helping reduce infection and inflammation. So 7 to 8 hours, um make sure that there's all the sleep hygiene things that kind of come, like a cold room or a cool room, not too hot, not too cold, and the lights, and there's like all these things that can kind of help with that. There have been some studies that show that the average sleep is 3 to 4 hours for those who have mental health issues such as PTSD, anxiety, or schizophrenia. So just a little tidbit there. Don't forget to create a good, healthy sleep hygiene. So, again, this is like the lights, electronics, how's your bedroom feel, the setup. Are there any distractions? So, like, if you have distractions when you're trying to sleep, like, so journaling, sometimes brain dumping helps before that. What are you eating before you go to bed? Alcohol, if you have too much, it is a depressant and it can give you like a false sense of sleep, but you're not really sleeping. We also want to know that in this space, consistency matters. So, 1.5 times, we're more likely to feel well rested. So, I would just say practice on figuring out what is your sleep routine and make it happen. Like, and just try to be consistent with that. Your body will adjust as you get consistent. So, another one on the list is nutrition. Our nutrition, now I'm not going to tell you how to eat, but remember, our gut and our brain are connected. Our gut is our second brain. Um, and again, the vagus nerve is connecting the two. There was a study by Baylor in 2020 that said leaky gut was causing stuff like depression, bipolar, anxiety, things like that. So, I'm going to say find healthy things to eat so that you can just kind of manage yourself. Again, I'm not going to tell you what to eat, but when we eat well, we feel better overall. So keep that in mind. Um, some other things to kind of think about is, you know, think about like if you need to make changes, find the motivation. There's name your motivation, create like, a goal around it, do gradual, make small changes, eat stuff you like. I don't believe in deprivation just because when you do that, you probably eat worse. So try to not do that. Pack snacks if you need to. These are just some things to kind of think about, like your environment, and just be mindful of that. Okay, so what are some other things that I think would be important to kind of know? Um, some practical tips to kind of self regulate your nervous system and just your stress response or to decrease it. And so think about like your arousal system, so your sense of control. So just learning to manage that, knowing your triggers. That's always important. Like what ticks you off. Maintaining a connection to your body, that mind body connection. Try to establish morning and night routines, being mindful of your breath. Sometimes we just have to take a minute and take a breath. Using our coping skills. Remember, our coping skills is just the vehicle to self love. So, that is also connected to our limbic system, which is our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. It's our brain's back door. So managing to kind of use the coping skills to kind of get in that way. Manage your sensory input. So how are we getting sensory overload? Are we kind of easing it in, but be mindful of your sensory input? One of my personal favorites, getting connected to nature. 30 minutes every day outside does wonders, does a lot of things for you. Staying grounded is another place. So, like if you feel yourself kind of going somewhere, stay grounded. Sometimes we just have to feel our way through things, and we have to practice relaxation techniques, making sure we're scheduling time and activities that bring us joy and happiness. Like, what's that favorite hobby or pastime that you like? Use your downtime to actually relax, not to like keep going, just to relax. Create a sacred space. So basically, if you create a space, it trains your brain as a way to use this space as a way to slow down, to kind of be in a good state of mind. So, how can we use embodiment and mindfulness together? How do we do that? So, one is we have to do like a body scan, is one way. Remember, being mindful in the mind and checking in with our body. Two, we're always being mindful movement. So, again, things like yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, these are different ones or some ones that you could use where you're not only working on your physical body, but you're working on the mental space. We are going to have some somatic experiencing. So, this is where we explore some techniques where we can integrate mindfulness with embodiment to address trauma, promote healing. So, just it's a space where we can create how that looks for each for us as well as our clients. Creative expression is another one. So, using a creative expression is just a way to integrate the two pieces together. So, therapy, art therapy, dance, creative writing, those will be more of your creative expressions. Nature immersion, we've mentioned this a few times. So, going on nature walks, listening to sounds, sights, and sensations, like what are all the things that kind of come your way? So, those would be the ways that I would try to combine the two, mindfulness as well as embodiment. By integrating the two, we can deepen our connection just to our body when we do that, and we can cultivate more present moment awareness. And then we again enhance our overall well being. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's just the point of you are not just doing things, but you're being in a space where you're kind of like making this happen. So, I hope that you guys were able to find something helpful out of this today. Um, as always, if you have any questions, make sure you drop them in the form, or not in the form, fill out the form to get your CEUs, and then drop any questions you may have in there. If you want a list of mindfulness practices, send me a note and I can make sure that I link that to you. It's not mine. I didn't come up with it, but it was something that I have found very helpful because it has a whole bunch of like mindfulness type practices in there. And there are also some things that you can do with a client in there. So I hope you guys found today helpful and that you got something out of this. And if you have any questions, just make sure you drop them in. I will talk to you soon. Y'all have a good one. Bye.